On December 26th of 2011, a young woman frantically called her grandmother, claiming that someone was following behind her in her car. All of a sudden, the line was cut off, and about 8 hours later, she was found deceased behind an abandoned barn with her car in a ditch miles away. This is the infuriating case of Hope Melton. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also predicting the future. In 11 years from now, the world will be underwater, and we will have grown gills to allow us to breathe, similar to fish. Oh, don't believe me? Well, come back in 11 years. But anyways, today, we're going over the case of Hope Melton and what happened to her. You're going to learn about an awful man with zero impulse control who did one of the worst things he possibly could have. For our story, we're headed to Chesterfield County, located in South Carolina. With a population of around 43,000 people, it's an interesting place to live. There's many different subdivisions of the county and also things to do. You could take a trip to Sherrill State Park and enjoy a nice day relaxing. You could head on down to the Chesterfield Museum and learn all about the history of the county. Another thing to do would be to go get some food at Shiloh Fish House, where they have an array of options to choose from. It's your pick. But sadly, none of those options are the reason as to why we're in the county today. Beverly Hope Roscoe Melton was born on December 4th of 1981 in Sherrill, South Carolina, to William and Elizabeth Roscoe. She was a good person that was loved by everyone that knew her. She had one sister, a sister named Shonda, and they got along great. Hope graduated an honor student from Chesterfield High School in 2000, and it was here that she was a member of the Beta Club, Vocational Honor Society, Health Occupational Class, and Chorus. So, in other words, she was very involved in school. After graduating, she got a job at TNT's Country Store as a clerk, and later was promoted to manager and worked here for 11 years from 19 to 30. Hope was really into home decorating, and she enjoyed shopping, walking, and she was training to become a cowgirl. Her favorite color was pink, and she was considered to be a true people person who shared her sweet smile with everyone. Hope attended Lancaster Church of God, where she was very involved and would actually donate a portion of her paycheck to the congregation every week. She was also in a relationship with a man named Gary Lee Melton, and in September of 2010, they got married. They had an ideal relationship, and everything between them was going wonderful. Hope was, well, hoping to further their relationship and have a child soon, and unfortunately, she was never afforded that opportunity. Only a year later, in December of 2011, everything would change. On December 25th of 2011, Hope and Gary spent the morning at church for a service, and then they had their families over to celebrate Christmas. High spirits were in the air. The families were talking about Hope and Gary starting their own little family, and exchanging of presents was also going on. Gary had bought Hope a pink beaded bracelet and a pink sweater for the holiday. This was her favorite color. Gary really adored her, and by all accounts, their relationship was really good. The next day, on December 26th, Hope had planned to go to her grandmother's house, which was about 29 miles away, to have some lunch with her and then go shopping. They wanted to take advantage of the after Christmas sales, which, can you really blame them? At about 11:45 a.m., Hope walked out to her car carrying a bunch of presents, getting ready to leave. Right before she was about to take off, Gary ran outside carrying a present because Hope forgot one. He then told her to call him when she gets to her grandmother's, so he knew that she was safe. She was supposed to arrive there at about 12:30. Sadly, this would be the last time the two of them spoke, as what happens next is shocking. Around 12:45, Hope's grandmother received a phone call from Hope, and she was frantic. She said that a guy was chasing her and that she was afraid of him. Her grandmother told her to not stop for anything and come straight to her house, but then all of a sudden, Hope's phone went dead, and that was the last time anyone heard from her. Alarmed by this, her grandmother told some family members, and so they got into their cars and went to look for her. They found Hope's car about 3 miles away from her grandmother's house. It was in a ditch with the engine still running, the tires were going in reverse, and Hope's purse was still in the car. At about 1:15 p.m., her grandmother called the local deputies to tell them about the car and about the phone call and how she usually stopped at this gas station called Jack's. This gas station would give the investigators pretty much all the information that they needed to know. A detective went to Jack's and talked to the owner and asked to see the surveillance tapes. He noticed that Hope walked into the store, smiling bright as ever. She looked very happy, and she paid for some gas and then exited the store. But the detective also noticed someone else in the surveillance footage that happened to catch his eye. A guy who was watching Hope and her every move. Someone who she got within inches of, not knowing what he was capable of. The detective then noticed that this guy was driving an orange car. As Hope drove away, the detective could see that the man in the orange car began following behind her. With this in mind, and knowing the direction that Hope traveled, the detective decided to drive that way and stop by a local company that had cameras outside. He got into contact with the owners of the building and was able to watch the surveillance footage, which showed Hope driving and the guy in the orange car following her. Meanwhile, other investigators were at the scene of Hope's vehicle trying to gather more evidence. Nearby, they found a blanket and a pink beaded bracelet, both having blood on them. The investigators then contacted Hope's family and asked them about the bracelet and if she had anything similar. Immediately, her family became even more worried because we know that Gary bought her a bracelet just like that a day before on Christmas. A few hours passed from the time that Hope disappeared, and the investigators were not ready to give up. The detective that was watching the surveillance footage began driving around, hoping to see the orange car that he saw in the videos. Luckily, he did. The orange car drove right past him, almost miraculously. The detective immediately turned his patrol car around and pulled over this individual. Behind the wheel of this orange car was a 23-year-old man named Nickolas Miller. Now, who exactly was Nickolas Miller? Born sometime in 1988, pretty much nothing is known about his childhood or who he really is. He was raised by and adopted by his grandmother, Helen, and she said that he was a very decent child growing up. Nickolas did have 2 children and a girlfriend at the time. Well, after the detective pulled him over, he was acting very nervous. The detective picked up on this and brought him to the station for some questioning. The investigators began asking Nickolas where he has been all day, and he told them that he was shopping at Walmart for a long time. The detective then decided to go see if this was true, and to his surprise, it was. But when the detective watched the surveillance footage, he noticed something very creepy. He noticed that Nickolas pulled into the parking lot and then went inside. The detective then noticed that Nickolas wasn't really shopping. He didn't have a basket or a cart, and it looked as if he was on a hunt. Well, that's because he was. The detective noticed that Nickolas was stalking another woman. He walked down an aisle and saw a blonde-haired woman who appeared to have caught his interest. Nickolas is then seen following this woman for a pretty long time until he sees that she meets up with a guy. After witnessing that, Nickolas appeared to be a bit spooked and then decided to leave the store. The detectives started to believe that he was getting closer to figuring out what happened to Hope, and so a search warrant was obtained to look through Nickolas's vehicle. What investigators found was shocking, to say the least. Inside of that bright orange car was a bloodied baseball bat and Hope's wallet. With this newly founded evidence, the police arrested Nickolas and brought him into an interrogation room. This time, at about 5 p.m., 5 hours after Hope had vanished, Nickolas confessed to everything, and what happened is very upsetting and startling. The sequence of events I'm going to tell you next are what occurred in Hope's last few hours. So basically, it was December 26th, the day after Christmas, and after Hope had packed her car and said goodbye to her husband, she left at about 11:45 a.m. for her grandmother's house about 45 minutes away. While driving there, Hope decided to make a pit stop for some gas at Jack's gas station. When she arrived, immediately Nickolas Miller had noticed, considering that he was literally hunting people this day. Nickolas was inside of the gas station and he bought some beer, and then he noticed that Hope was coming inside, so he opened the door for her. Then he went to sit in his car, and Hope paid for some gas, and then she went to pump gas. Meanwhile, Nickolas was in his car watching her every move. When Hope left the gas station, Nickolas started following her, and she took notice of this. She called her grandmother in a panic, stating that an unknown guy was following her and really scaring her. All of a sudden, the line cut out, and it's not sure as to why that exactly happened, but it's likely due to bad service in the area, or because Nickolas rammed his car into Hope's in order to force her off the road. After doing this, her car ended up in a ditch, and Nickolas got out of his car with a bat and forced Hope to get into his vehicle. He then drove to a secluded area where he took advantage of her, and then drove around the area until he drove a bit to Kershaw County, where he proceeded to try to do the same thing. But Hope resisted, and so he beat her to death with a baseball bat. She begged for her life, but Nickolas didn't care. That's absolutely awful. It was also found that Nickolas had been following another woman this day in his car, but after she drove towards a heavily populated area, he gave up. A sheriff for Chesterfield County named Sam Parker had met with Nickolas on this day, and he really screwed some things up. Sam had told Nickolas that if he agreed to show him where the body was, Nickolas wouldn't get the death penalty. So he decided to tell Sam where Hope's body was, and she was found in an absolutely horrid manner. The things that Nickolas did are so inhumane, it's hard to talk about. He told Sam and other investigators that the day prior, on Christmas, he had been fired from his job and his girlfriend kicked him out of their house. After she did that, Nickolas said that he lost control and chased his girlfriend down in his car. So it's clear he had a habit of this type of behavior. The weird thing, though, is that this was his first offense. He had never run into trouble with the law previously. To go from being a supposed non-violent person to a very violent criminal is a bit bizarre. But it would take about 4 years to convict Nickolas, and this is because of what I stated earlier. The sheriff, Sam Parker, screwed some things up. Because he had told Nickolas that if he agreed to show him where Hope's body was in return for not getting the death penalty, Sam was arrested and charged with corruption and misconduct charges apparently unrelated to this case. What Sam Parker did basically made it so that there was no way to potentially give Nickolas the death penalty. That was off the table. Hope's family was absolutely infuriated by this, and rightfully so. What Nickolas did to her is sickening. It's so upsetting to know that Hope did nothing wrong in this situation at all. She just so happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nickolas Jermaine Miller ended up pleading guilty to murder, 2 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct, 2 counts of solicitation to commit a felony, and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and so it's fortunate that at least he's rotting away. His grandmother Helen said that he was set up, drunk, and under pressure when he confessed to the police. That there were a lot of lies being told that weren't true. Helen, he confessed to the crime. Give it up. Hope's sister spoke during the trial and said that Nickolas is a piece of scum and terrified of dying, that she hopes that God shows him and offers him the same mercy that he showed her sister, and she hopes that he gets pounded and tormented and mutilated exactly like he did to Hope. What a great sister. Really took the words out of everyone's mouth, because words cannot describe how I feel about these evil demons who do these type of things to innocent people. Hell is definitely waiting for this man. But Hope Melton was a 30-year-old woman who was really just starting her life with her new husband. They had planned on getting married, having children, and so on. It's upsetting to know that she was never afforded that opportunity to grow into who she was supposed to. I read that Hope's husband, Gary, was having a very hard time after this, having to see a therapist, and I can only imagine the grief that him and the rest of Hope's family was put through. I genuinely hope that they are all doing okay and are able to find some peace in such a dark world. Rest in peace, Beverly Hope Roscoe Melton. But anyways, thank you for watching this episode of High Time Crime. If true crime is your thing, then please subscribe and hit the like button, because that's all we do. I also have a second account with my brother named Horrifying, where we tell stories about everything paranormal. This includes true crime, mysteries, and things that are just downright spooky. I'd greatly appreciate if you subscribe to that too. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, friend.